Welcome to the Hidden Corners, where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur, as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind. In the eerie depths of a haunted asylum, where sanity dissolves and ghostly secrets await, a chilling tale unfolds. Join us as Cameron Buckner reads a letter from one of our listeners. The Haunted Asylum.
I'm a police officer in my small hometown in South Arkansas. And every year we get calls about yelling and screaming at this old abandoned hospital that we have in town. This year proved no different. It was around 3 a.m. when the call came out about screaming, and the caller thought they saw people go inside. My supervisor called the whole shift to meet at the department, and we all went to the hospital together. After we arrived and entered the first building, I saw a light to the left of my head. I turned around as fast as possible to see what it was. I was irritated to find out it was the rookie with his pistol flashlight pointed right at me. I guess he forgot wherever he pointed his light was also the muzzle of his gun. After the initial heart attack and following ripping I gave the guy, we all began to hear talking and yelling on the floors above us. Our supervisor took him and 4 other guys up the stairs to investigate. They left me and one other cop to watch the stairs and the entrance. We heard the guys walking up the stairs, and the screaming was constant ahead of them. The yells and screams stayed on the floor above my teammates the whole time. We were all in radio contact, so we knew what was going on. As they approached the top floor, all the screams and noises stopped and began again on the floor beneath them. They began their way back to us after what felt like hours, and when they got to the last floor, the screaming stopped again, only to start up at the opposite side of the building's entryway. I'd love to say we stayed and searched the whole property, but we didn't. We convinced ourselves that it was the local meth heads messing with the cops, and we hightailed it out of there. I learned later that the place was an abandoned insane asylum and was even run by nuns at one point. Sadly, after it had been closed down, a lot of people had broke in and done some satanic rituals, and some guys even found cats and a skunk with their throats cut, and they were laid in the middle of pentagrams that were painted on the floor. The name of that old asylum is called Warner Brown, and it is in the town of El Dorado, Arkansas. I don't recommend anyone go there at night, especially on Halloween.
The Warner Brown Hospital still stands today. Originally built in 1919, having sat abandoned for the past several years, there have been numerous stories of hauntings, ghosts, and devil worship. Abandoned asylums don't need ghosts to make them creepy. The pictures of hard metal bed frames, thin stained mattresses, bindings for arms and legs, cages for humans, and ice picks used in lobotomies are enough to make you turn and run. If you do an internet search, you'll find literally hundreds of abandoned, haunted asylums. Terrifying places, all of them. Here are just a few of the many. Danvers Lunatic Asylum in Massachusetts opened in the year 1878. Danvers housed the mentally ill and was a prison for the mentally unstable. The number of admissions in the asylum increased so much that the hospital became understaffed, and the deaths were so frequent and unnoticed that the staff discovered bodies of the prisoners only when they started to rot. It is known as the Witch's Castle on the Hill. It resides in the town of Danvers, Massachusetts, which was formerly known as Salem Village and was the first actual location of the 1692 Salem witch trials. And more significantly, the fanatical judge of the witch trials, Jonathan Hawthorne, lived in a house built by his father in 1646 at the top of the hill, in the exact location on which the asylum stands today. It has also been speculated that John Proctor and 4 other accused witches were hung on Gallows Hill in 1692, the property on which Danvers was built. Byberry Mental Hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was constructed in 1906 and began as a working farm for the mentally ill, but by 1920 a large asylum was completed. As asylums grew in popularity throughout the country, Byberry became known for its abuse and neglect of its patients, complete with padded cells, solitary confinement, beatings, lobotomies, and electric shock treatment. There are miles of catacombs beneath the abandoned asylum and stories of ghosts lurking in the tunnels below. It is also said that a gang of satanic occultists has taken refuge in the dilapidated building. Rolling Hills Asylum in New York was established in 1827 as a poorhouse. Official documents count over 1,700 deaths, including the poor, the widowed, the orphaned, the handicapped, the criminal, and the alcoholic. Paranormal activities have been documented, including doors slamming shut, screaming and screeching noises. There's also a particular hallway named the Shadow Hallway because of the many shadows that have been seen peeking out of doors and crawling across the corridor. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia was built around the Civil War era. This asylum was designed to house around 250 patients, but ended up holding more than 2,400. Patients were locked in cages, chained to beds, and they were known for ice pick lobotomies. These practices led to hundreds of deaths and much suffering. The asylum was briefly used as a military base during the Civil War, and some people have also reported seeing ghosts of soldiers strolling down the corridors. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky is one of America's most haunted spots. This hospital has documented over 63,000 deaths. Built in 1910, it initially housed tuberculosis patients, but a history of mistreating their patients and experimenting on them caused a record number of deaths. Some of the documented paranormal occurrences include the spirit of a little boy who likes to play rubber balls in the hallway and has actually been caught on tape. There was also a nurse who hung herself in room 502, and several people have reported seeing her ghost hanging from a light fixture in that room. Another nurse plunged to her death from that same room's window, and rumor has it that she was actually pushed. Scattered screams and footsteps are a common occurrence. It is also speculated that satanic rituals have taken place within its walls. But these creepy places are not just in the United States. Before shutting down in 1995, the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum in Australia saw 128 years of terror, with almost 9,000 deaths. Common sights at this asylum include faces in windows, nurses doing their rounds, and children laughing and crying. There's also a story about a woman who was thrown out of the window and died, and her ghost has been seen by many visitors. At the Ganjam Psychiatric Hospital in South Korea, locals grew suspicious once the patients started disappearing from this hospital. There were rumors that the doctors themselves were going insane and kept patients as hostages, rivaling them to madness and ultimately brutally killing them. It's said that the place was shut down because of sewage problems, but nonetheless it has become a haunted graveyard. One of the most haunted locations in Norway, the Lear Sky House, Hospital has been officially abandoned since 1985, but rumors have it that it still houses psychiatric patients who share the space with ghosts, shadows, and odd noises. The hospital was known for its illegal drug testing on their patients, resulting in a number of deaths. Narrenturm in Austria was Europe's first insane asylum, also known as Vienna's Fool's Tower, and was built in 1784. Currently, it is the Anatomical Pathological Museum, which features more than 4,000 graphic, gruesome abnormalities, jars full of deformed fetuses, and sickening wax models of unspeakable things. Not a museum I would look forward to visiting. Old Book is the name given to a ghost that haunts a cemetery and tree on the grounds of the Peoria State Hospital in Bartonville, Illinois. While rumors of ghosts and ghost stories are highly speculative, the Old Book tale has been documented many times. Among those documenting the tale is the first director of the State Insane Asylum, George Zeller. The name Old Book is the name given to a popular patient at the hospital. The well-liked old man worked as a grave digger during his time at Peoria State Hospital. It is said that following burial services for deceased patients, he would lean against an old elm tree and weep for the dead. Various sources report that Old Book's official name was recorded as Manuel Bookbinder, a.k.a. A. Bookbinder. He lived from 1878 until 1910, and grave marker 713 on the cemetery grounds lists his name as A. Bookbinder. It is said that Old Book was mute, so no one could ask him his real name. No one knows what his given name was, but he was allegedly called Bookbinder because of his previous occupation at the printing house where he worked before he was brought to the hospital. Despite his disabilities, he was one of the staff's most favored patients. The superstitious tale surrounding Old Book is somewhat unusual among ghost stories, and that it was reportedly witnessed by hundreds of people. The story goes that when Old Book died, his funeral was attended by hundreds of patients and staff members who became witnesses to the ghostly phenomenon that was about to transpire. As workers were attempting to lower what should have been a heavy casket, they discovered that it instead felt empty. Suddenly, a crying sound echoed from the graveyard elm tree, and everyone in attendance turned and looked, including Dr. Zeller, who later detailed Bookbinder and the surrounding events in his diary. They all claimed to have seen Old Book standing by the tree. They so believed it to be true that Zeller had the casket opened to ensure that Old Book still lay inside. As the lid was opened, the crying ceased, and Old Book's corpse was found undisturbed in the coffin. Days passed, and the tree began to die. Several of the ground's crewmen tried to remove the graveyard elm, or the crying tree, as it was also known. None were successful, citing the weeping emanating from the tree. One man even tried to cut it down with an axe, but when striking the side, terrible wailing would sound, as if Old Book himself was being chopped. In later years, the elm was struck during a lightning storm and was finally removed from the field. There are endless stories of sick, poor, or mentally ill patients suffering at the hands of mad doctors with inhumane treatment and experimental torture. Not a fun subject, but one that exists in the history of these old abandoned asylums. It is no wonder that restless souls and haunted ghosts reside in the halls of these sanatoriums.